Are you sure?
Here's the 30-second lesson on what legends know. Never ask a bride why she's getting married. Don't wear a skirt on a windy day. Deodorant is not a shower. Don't sniff chili flakes. And don't forget, saving is not investing. Legends don't just save, they invest in mutual funds. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Today's Cut the Clutter talks about a very interesting document that has come out, a piece of research or a report that's come out of Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Committee. And this is a report by a group of authors, 3 authors, headed by Shamika Ravi, who you've sometimes seen in interviews, sometimes we've published her also. She's a well-known scholar, graduate of Delhi School of Economics, or master's from Delhi School of Economics, and then PhD from NYU, and then she has taught for 10 years at Indian School of Business, Hyderabad, and then at Brookings, and now she's full-time at PMEAC, and with her, Abraham Jose and Apurv Kumar Mishra. So what is this report? This report, I bet some of you have been, or many of you have been watching it on your TV channels, and also discussions, particularly polarized discussions and debates around it. Polarized and also, in some cases, raising alarm. Now, is polarization justified? Is alarm justified? How seriously are these facts to be taken? All of that, the answer to all of that lies in one question. What do these facts mean? And what are these facts telling us? It's a 67-page report, of which I'm sharing a link with you with the description. You can read the whole report. It's very easy to read. It's full of good graphics. In fact, we will borrow and use gratefully some graphics from this report in this episode of Cut the Clutter as well. So this report is Share of Religious Minorities, a cross-country analysis, 1950 to 2015. So this is for 65 years. Cross country in this case doesn't mean like cross country run कि आप गांव में सड़क से हटके भाग रहे हैं, you're running running at the countryside. No, cross country means across countries of the world. So this report has taken 167 countries. 167 countries, and those have then been analyzed using data and analysis from another organization, an international organization of academics, RCS-DEM. What does RCS-DEM stand for? It stands for Religious Characteristics of States. That's RCS. Dataset Project, Demographics. So DEM. So RCS-DEM. RCS-DEM data has been used by the authors of this EAC-PM, Economic Advisory Council to the Prime Minister report. And who are the people who are currently leading the research at RCS-DEM? So the 2 lead researchers at RCS-DEM are number 1, Dr. Davis Brown at Baylor University Institute of Studies of Religions, and second, Dr. Patrick James, who's the Dornsife Dean's Professor of International Relations at University of Southern California. These 2 have put together the data that the PMEAC group has used. Where has this group, the RCS-DEM group, got their data? These are very important questions because therein lies the clutter. Because people say you haven't held a survey, from where are you drawing all this data? They in turn have taken their data from a bunch of other organizations. So one is WRD, that is the World Religion Database, and number 2 is World Religion Project, WRP, and there is also then Pew Research Center. So all of these are reputed organizations. There is also Atlas of Religion, etc. But basically, RCS-DEM have taken their data from WRD, WRP. Now that said, what is it that this data and this report is telling us? I will talk about what this report is saying and the data that this report is revealing to us in some detail, but only in some detail, not too much detail, because in that case, I will only be causing more clutter, which is not necessary. This is a report with a great deal of clarity. You can see that. Also because, and this is a teaser, and also because alongside Cut the Clutter, as we publish Cut the Clutter, soon after that, we will also be publishing an interview a conversation that I had with Shamika Ravi, the lead author of this report, where she's answered some of these questions and she's explained some of these as well. So you can also listen to her. You will also see her talking about some of these as we go along in very short clips, but you can also watch that full interview in our The Print Uninterrupted series shortly after the publication of this episode of Cut the Clutter.
We are also quite anomalous. We are unlike what is common in our neighborhood. So if you look at the SAARC+1, this neighborhood, then you see that other than Myanmar, we as a country are the only place where you've had a 7.8% increase in the minority share over 65 years. Because all our neighbors, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Sri Lanka, and Bhutan, have had alarming decline in their minority share. I think what is important from the Indian perspective is that, we do care about minority. We have a lot of policy making which is driven. We have an entire ministry of minority affairs. We have lots of policies at the federal, central level, as well as the state levels, which are catering to different demographies. And I think without scientific and objective assessment of how things are on the ground, how are we even to talk about some of these policies and what is happening to these policies over time? And I think we did see a gap in the literature. We have not been able to find anything substantial in the last few decades on what is happening to religious demographics and shares in India on the ground. Now, again, I think this is too little. This is the first attempt. I think it is step 0 to having more conversations on what exactly does it mean. But I think even as far as research is concerned, while it is an objective measure, but it's a national measure, we really need to have a lot of these studies at state levels. Because implementation of a lot of our policies that pertain to minority affairs, etc., health policy, education policy, etc., are state subject. So I think this is just the beginning. It fills a certain gap in the literature, and it helps us think about policy implication, policy effectiveness, and also future policy. For me, it is a matter of pride that we are plural and we have been extremely supportive and encouraging, and therefore the kind of narrative building you are seeing, not just in the Western press, but among scholars as well, that India is not particularly hospitable to minorities or is unwelcoming. That's not true at all. On the ground, the reality is that minority as a group is thriving. And this is, again, you're talking about the Muslim population within that. For me, it's equally important that the Muslim share is increasing, Christian share is increasing, Sikh share is increasing, and Buddhists.
Now, these are the dozen highlights of the report, and I will run through them one by one. So, this was a study of 167 countries, 167 countries. In these countries, in 1950, majority communities averaged 75% of the population. This is a dumb average over 167 countries. What has happened in 65 years? In 65 years, across the board, there's been an average decline of 21.9%. Let's just say, for the simplicity of understanding, 22%. So, on an average, the majority population in these 167 countries have declined by 22%, which means what was 75% at that point has come to about 58.5%. Still, on an average, these are majorities. But what is the trend? The trend is that globally, majority communities across countries are declining in terms of the percentage of the total population. Now, this could be because other communities are producing more babies. It could be because there is more migration. It could be because of conversions. It could be because people are giving up religion and saying, I'm an atheist. It could be due to multiple factors. Now, those factors are specific to each country, but there are trends. But that's why the largest trend in this study is that across the world, the majority community is declining in its percentage of the overall population. There are some significant nuances, and I will come to that as we go ahead, so stay with me. However, the takeaway from the first point is that the world has become a more heterogeneous place, a more diverse place, and that's what the authors are also saying. Good news. Number 2, among the 40 largest countries where change has taken place, not 40 largest as in largest countries by way of population, 40 countries in which the largest change has taken place. It's very significant. 21 are in Africa. 21 are in Africa, and there is an underlying fact there. First of all, one country accounts for more than half of the countries in which the highest percentage change has taken place in terms of the reduction of the share of the majority population. With that, underlying that is another fact, that there is also a set of faiths, indigenous faiths, called animism. I can pray to an animal, I can pray to a plant, I can pray to a planet, whatever. Animism in general, those are indigenous faiths. So in 1950, 24 countries in the world had animism as their largest faith, as their majority faith. Now the number is zero. Number is zero, and most of those countries happen to be in Africa. So one takeaway, more than half of the 40 largest cases of reduction of percentage of population for a majority lie in Africa, 21 out of 40. Second, most of these have to do with animist faiths. For example, if you see a country called Liberia, the majority has declined by 99.1%. So it's not as if Hindus have become Muslims or Muslims have become Christians. It's because animists have converted, in this case, most of them to Christianity. Namibia also is a case like that. So that is one. Next, of the 123 countries which are down, out of the 167 countries that have been studied, 123 countries have shown a decline in the percentage of the population of the majority community. 123. Out of 123, and that's again a nuanced point, so please take it as a nuanced point. Out of the 123, barring only three, none is a Muslim country. So 120 are non-Muslim countries. Even the three Muslim countries, the decline in majority population is inside of 1%. Say inside of 1%, except maybe Maldives, where it's 1.47%, but Maldives is a very small population base. And I'm curious as to why this decline in Maldives, because it's a fully Sunni Islamic country. It could be that over time, some people have converted to Christianity or become Christian, or it could be that over time, some Ahmadis and maybe some Shias are afraid of reporting themselves as Ahmadis and Shia. So that is the only Islamic country, one of the three, where the decline in the majority's percentage is more than 1%. Otherwise, there is only three countries. The other two countries is less than 1%. And once again, in those countries also, Iran, for example, or Turkey, in those countries also, it might be a function, a little bit of the Sunni-Shia equation, but that is not significant. The significant thing is that of the 123 countries where the majority's population has come down, only 3 are Islamic, and there also the population decline, the percentage decline, not population decline, is really very marginal. I know you must be wondering, why am I not talking about India? But you've been watching and hearing about India for a long time on your TV channels. So I will keep it for the end because there is much to talk about there. So next point is OECD countries. OECD is Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. OECD countries is a grouping of 38 countries which are seen as highly developed, following the free market principles in general, and also democracies. Not all of these are really large countries, but see, they only account for 18% of the world's population. That is less than 1 in 5 people, human beings in the world, lives in OECD countries, but they account for 3/5 of the global GDP. That is 60% of the global GDP, 3/4 of the global trade, 75% of the global trade, 90% of overseas development assistance in terms of giving aid to other countries. 90% comes from these countries, and half of the energy consumption of the world they account for. Of these, 35 countries have been analyzed. 3 have been left out for various reasons. One, for example, Germany, simply because data on the East German era is not available. That's what the researchers say. But 35 have been studied, and these 35 tell you that of these, in 33, the percentage of majority population has declined. and the average decline across the OECD countries is 29%. Now, what is it telling us? The researchers say it's telling us that these are countries which are democratic, which have good development, where economies are doing very well, where people enjoy a very high quality of life. So the fact that the majority population is declining as a percentage of overall population, which means the population of minorities is going up, that is a positive. That tells you these are well-governed, democratic, liberal countries with growing economies and growing opportunities. And that's why we should also be happy in India that in our country also, the percentage of minorities is going up. Their share in the overall population is going up. That is, their share in the overall population is going up. That is the indicator from this. That is the indicator from this data on the OECD countries. Then I told you early on that there are some nuances that of the 167 countries in 123, the percentage of majority population has been declining. But in 44, by implication, it is not declining. If you look at those 44, the question will be, what are these 44? And that is the nuance. Of these 44 countries, 24 are Muslim countries. 24 are Muslim countries. It's not as if all are Muslim countries, because immediate thing would be, oh, all of these must be Muslim countries. These are not all Muslim countries, but yes, 24 are Muslim countries, more than half. Who are the rest? A lot of these are Christian countries, couple are Buddhist countries. So this is an assortment of countries. There are also other religion-based differences. These are the nuances. For example, if there are 94 countries out of these 167 where Christians were in a majority in 1950, of the 94 countries where Christians were in a majority, in 77, the Christian majority has seen a decline as in their share of the overall population. 77 out of 94. If you see Muslim countries, Islamic countries, there are 38 Islamic countries in this grouping, of which 25 have seen an increase in the percentage of the majority community. Now, it can be due to many reasons, but one of the major reasons is that many of these countries are actually either dictatorships or emirates or run by sultans and monarchies, and they are not open to immigration. Immigration as in naturalization. So an Indian can go and work in UAE, or a Pakistani or Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan, you can work in UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, but you will not be naturalized and become a citizen there. Whereas anybody from anywhere in the world can go to, in fact, most of the OECD countries and get naturalized there and become a citizen there. So there is that distinction as well. Now come to the subcontinent, and that's very interesting because that's become the headline point. And the headline point that's being discussed is that in India, the percentage of Hindus has gone down from 84.68% in 1950 to 78.06% now. That's a decline of 7.82%. At the same time, the mirror image of that is that the percentage of Muslims has gone up from 9.84% in 1950 to 14.09%, that is in 2015. That on the base of 9.84% is an increase of 43.5%. Once again, remember, absolutes, base, percentages, these are very different things. So the immediate thing would be, oh, that means the gap between Hindus and Muslims is narrowing. However, if you've been following Indian census reports and also the last 3 or 4 national family health surveys, it's quite clear that there's been a gap. There's been a gap in the total fertility rate for the Muslim population and Hindu population in India. Hindu population and other minorities, Christians, Sikhs, Jains, Buddhists, everybody. That gap was much larger. That gap has been narrowing. However, the gap is still there. In fact, according to the last NFHS, for Hindus, TFR was 1.9. That is 10 Hindu women in their fertile age produced 19 children. This is statistics. Whereas 10 Muslim women in their fertile age produced 23 children. So there is still a gap, but the gap has narrowed and the gap is narrowing further. However, the gap was higher earlier and probably some of that's reflecting in this demographic change as well. At the same time, this data also holds up the mirror to those, the mirror of facts to those who had a more alarmist view of what they see as being swamped by the Muslim minority in India, or the Muslim minority becoming a majority in India. Look at the other minorities in India. Christians are about the same as before. 2.24% has become 2.36%. Sikhs have gone up 1.24% to 1.85%. Buddhists have gone up from 0.05% to 0.81%. That might also be because some of the Dalits might have converted to Buddhism. And Jains have declined. Again, they are a microscopic minority from 0.45% to 0.36%. This is the picture. This is the picture in India. Now, once again, if you extrapolate this with the difference that we know already in fertility rates, I would think, I'm not a statistician, I would think that this difference will be almost fully explained by that difference in fertility rates over the decades. So this should also set and rest the idea or the notion that millions of people have been coming in, millions of Muslims have been coming in from Bangladesh and settling in India, and India is swamped by illegal Muslim migrants. However, if you see the changes in Bangladesh, that is significant, and that's of importance to India. If you see the population in Bangladesh compared to the numbers in 1950 in what was then East Pakistan, the percentage of Muslims has gone up by 18% as a percentage of the population, and the percentage of Hindus has declined heavily. Percentage of Hindus has declined from 23% then to 8% now. Once again, we know the reason. We know the reason that because there have been many waves of Hindu migration from Bangladesh, or what used to be East Pakistan, not so much from Bangladesh, from what used to be East Pakistan into India. There were at least 3 waves in the 50s because things were still settling down. That is how the Nehru-Liaquat Pact came in. And as we know, Liaquat Ali was not able to keep his part of that pact. He also got assassinated soon afterwards. In the 60s also, there was one wave of Hindu refugees coming in 1963. That's when the Hazrat Bal incident took place in Kashmir. There were reprisals against Hindus in East Pakistan. After 65 war, there was another wave. And then 1971 war was another wave. So number of Hindus has really come down in Bangladesh. And many of those have come into India. And that will feed straight into the CAA debate, that people who've come in, should they be given citizenship or not? I would like to believe that most people, at least those who came in until about 25, 30 years back or 40 years back, or until at least 1971, those have already become citizens. And that's why also CAA, as it exists, is limited to those who've come in by 31st of December 2014. Now, if you look at this data, another data point will catch you. In fact, it threw me also. That in Pakistan, you see the percentage of Hindus in 1950. The percentage of Hindus in 1950 was 13.5%. Today, it's 2%. So what happened to the rest of the Hindus? Where did they go? At least we don't know that so many have come into India, right? There are some who've come into India, but they are in thousands, maybe tens of thousands. They are not into crores, right? 13.5% of Pakistan's population in 1950. But that is how this report is. And that is something that we explored further. And I also then confirmed with Shamika Ravi what's happened in that case is that the researchers have taken legal entities. So data on legal entities, not geographical entities. So legal entity, Pakistan was one at that point. So 13.5% was the percentage of Hindus in all of Pakistan. Now, of those that lived in East Pakistan, then went away with Bangladesh. So for comparisons, if you say, 13.5% Hindus in 1950, 2% now, that is not a like-for-like comparison. That will be very, very misleading and also inflammatory. The fact is that if you look at, and I checked out Pakistan's census report of 1951, it shows that in West Pakistan region in 1951, there was 1.56% Hindus. That number is about 2% now, according to this report. So it is also important to keep that fact in perspective and not to run away by just looking at broad headline numbers. That 13.5% of 1950 also includes Hindus living in what was then East Pakistan. In fact, this data becomes very important and very interesting when we look at our own neighborhood, that is the SAARC region. And this report also has a chart on the SAARC region. Please see that chart. Please see the map also. There you will see that all the major countries around India, in India's neighborhood, have seen an increase in the percentage of majority population. It is not just the Islamic countries, Pakistan and Bangladesh, yes, but also, in fact, for whatever it's worth, Maldives has seen a tiny bit reduction in the percentage of majority population, whatever that means. But Pakistan and Bangladesh, yes, have seen an increase in their majority population. At the same time, Bhutan and Sri Lanka, which are predominantly Buddhist, they've seen an increase in the percentage of their Buddhist population. Now, in Bhutan's case, counting is an issue because a lot of the Hindus there are Nepali Hindus, and many of them were expelled in the 90s. So that might be the underlying cause. In Sri Lanka, also the number of Buddhists has gone up, partly because maybe a lot of the Tamils came into India as refugees, and also many of the stateless Tamils in Sri Lanka also left and were given Indian citizenship as a result of multiple Indira Gandhi, Sirimavo Accords, etc., etc. All of that came up in the Kachatibu context. In Myanmar, on the other hand, the percentage of the majority Buddhists has come down. Again, partly because a lot of the tribals, particularly in northern Burma or northern Myanmar, have converted to Christianity. So the percentage of Christians has doubled from 4 to 8% in Myanmar, but the percentage of Buddhists has come down. So it's a varying picture. But in that varying picture, India stands out because this is where generally minorities have doing well, because India is where generally minorities have done well demographically, at least in terms of these numbers. So I will now sign off reading in conclusion one para from the report written by the authors, and that para goes that this shows that minorities in India, and I quote, are not just protected but thriving in our country, in India. This is particularly remarkable given the wider context within the South Asian neighborhood, where the share of the majority religious denominations has increased and minorities shrunk across Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, and Afghanistan. And again, the authors say that this shows that India has continued its civilizational tradition of harboring persecuted peoples from several countries. Having read that and having seen that, and now this concluding line is mine, not the authors. This data tells us that there are interesting debating points, but really this is something to be proud of and nothing to feel paranoid about.